Y'all, I've literally been wanting to talk to y'all about this for the past nearly a year. I'm actually, for one, surprised that I was able to keep this a secret for so long, because I'm horrible at keeping secrets. Actually, I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to keep this a secret, but I guess like in real life, I feel like I was pretty open about it. And I mean, all my friends and family kind of know what happened, and we've just been kind of waiting for the show to finally air so I can talk about it. Here, I need to add context for the people that don't know what the heck I'm talking about. I was on X on the Beach this season. Probably gone for about a month. I was in a hotel for probably about 14 days. I was in that house, like actually filming X on the Beach for probably like 4 or 5 days. I don't even know how we pulled it off on, I guess, being gone for a month, and not a lot of people noticed. And some people might not even know that I was on the show because I didn't promote it on any of my social media. And that's because I had a horrible time, which actually sucks because I was so excited to go on X on the Beach. Y'all have no idea. Y'all know me. I love clout. So of course, like I was so excited about the fact that I was going to be going on another reality show, first reality show after Big Brother, my comeback to TV. I just had such high hopes for how it was going to go. It was pretty apparent pretty early on that it wasn't going to go the way that I was expecting it to. The day that I got kicked off, that I remember finally being like, wow, this is actually really fun. I'm glad that I did this. And then, but let's talk about that. So there's 2 bedrooms. I don't know if y'all got that on how they edited it, like how it looked, but there was a bedroom upstairs where everyone would sleep. And there was a room downstairs. The time when I got there was where Bryce was staying. They said, hey, you could either sleep in like the one cot upstairs, or you can sleep downstairs where there's like, you could put 2 cots together and have like a mega bed and have your own room. So I'm afraid of the dark, which honestly, no one on the show believed me. They all thought that I was lying. I don't know. But I'm afraid of the dark. So I didn't want to stay in a pitch black room full of a bunch of people I didn't know. So I was like, well, I'm going to take the room downstairs and I get a mega bed. So that's great. Like the whole room to myself. It was great. And then Bryce and Nicole had just kind of gotten together. So he had moved upstairs to sleep with Nicole. So the reason why that's important, you'll see. I'm there for like 4 days, 5 days. I don't even know. And everything's good. The air conditioner is great. The ventilation is wonderful. The beds were actually really uncomfortable, by the way. But the temperature was good. So Nicole had just gotten kicked off the show. She, Ray's ex had come in and sent Nicole home. And Bryce was like distraught. And he was like crying. And there was a clip, I don't know if they showed it. First, let me say, the girl that came in as Ray's ex was so nice. I thought I came in at a bad time and I thought that people hated me. I felt so bad for her because everyone hated her. And of course, because I'd gone to the beach with them, I'd gotten to know her on the ride back. And I felt bad that everyone was being so mean to her and that she felt so left out. Bryce was over here crying and saying Nicole left and this girl is blah, blah. And then I was like, hold on. I was like, she's actually really nice. I was like, y'all should give her a chance. And then Bryce blew up at me and was like, how dare you say that? And then I was like, you're a fucking asshole. And then I just stormed out of the room. So I'm actually surprised that they didn't air that fight. But needless to say, me and Bryce were not friends. Anyways, later that night, Bryce was distraught. He could not sleep in the bed that him and Nicole shared that night because he was just too sad. So he said that he was going to move back downstairs to the room that I was in because that's where he had slept previously. And, there was extra beds, so, whatever. He comes in and he's like, it's hot in here. This is blowing out hot air. And he turns it off. Which, keep in mind, I've been in here for 4 to 5 days and the temperature's been fine. So I will admit it was a little warmer in there than usual, but it was also really warm in Spain. So, at least when the air was on, it was blowing circulation. So then he turned it off and there was no circulation in this room. It was so hot. And so I remember I fell asleep for like an hour, 2 hours, who knows. And I woke up and I was like, Bryce, it's so hot in here. You have to turn the air conditioner back on. And he's kind of across the room. So I kind of I was like, Bryce, kind of yelling to wake him up. And to that, he responds, you're such a bitch. You're such a cunt. dramatically so mad that I just asked him to turn on the air conditioner that he had turned off. And I remember being like, I was laying in my bed at the time, and I was like in shock of how this man just literally called me a bitch and the C word. I just remember being in absolute shock by how he just spoke to me, because I simply just asked him to turn the air conditioner back on that he had come in and turned off. Then I was like, kind of like a little bit, I was like too scared to move because he was so aggressive. I tried to go to bed again, and I was like, okay, whatever. But it was just way, way, way too hot. I then stand up and get out of bed, and I'm like standing at the foot of his bed, trying to see if there's a way that I could turn the air conditioner on myself. But the air conditioner is above his bed, so I would literally have to walk on top of his bed to get to it. And this man just called me a bitch and a cunt. I wasn't about to like step on his bed, so I nudged him with my foot, because again, like I'm standing on the end of his bed and the beds are kind of low. So I guess like maybe it would have been nicer if I like leaned down to like nudge him with my hand. I don't know, because somewhere lost in translation, he also claims that I kicked him. I didn't. I literally picked my foot up and like nudged him with my foot, and I was like, hey, can you please, I was like, I know you're asleep, but can you please turn the air conditioner back on? Like, it's so hot in here. He springs up out of bed and he says, Catherine, you are the R word. Like he calls me a slur. And if you know me in regular life, every time I hear somebody say that to me, I don't initially judge them for saying that, because a lot of people say that word ignorantly. A lot of people are ignorant to the fact that you're not supposed to say the R word. I mean, I don't know how they live in a hole, but like a lot of people still think that it's okay to use the R word as a synonym for stupid or dumb. So every time I hear somebody say that word, I always just calmly say like, hey, you really shouldn't say that word. That's not a right word to say. That shouldn't be in your vocabulary. So Bryce called me, did, and I said, hey, that's really not a good word to say. That shouldn't be in your vocabulary. By the way, I also have learning disabilities, so you're calling me a slur. And Bryce knows I have learning disability. Everyone who knows me knows that I am neurodivergent and that I do have learning disabilities. And I reminded him of that, even though he already knew. And instead of him being like, oh, sorry, I meant you're stupid, like easily like any other person that's not an asshole, that's like a kind of an asshole but not a huge asshole probably would have done. Instead, he goes, oh, so I was right. You are the R word. I call it like I see it. And I remember being so like taken back by, I couldn't believe like the hate that someone would have in their heart, that I would literally just say kindly, like calmly be like, hey, like don't call me that. It's a bad word to say. By the way, I have learning disabilities, so you're calling me a slur. And then them respond with, oh, okay, so I was right. Like I call it like I see it. So then his foot was hanging off the bed, so I slapped him on the bottom of the foot. And it wasn't like, again, it wasn't a slap. I wasn't trying to be violent by any means. I wasn't even really trying to slap him so much. I was mostly trying to, like, it was more of like a way to like create emphasis. Like, hey, like I was like, don't call me that, like it's kind of like how you would nudge your friend, like don't call me that, Well, he then like screams like I had just like, I don't know, like just attacked him, and goes, he's like yelling and saying like, you hit me. And I was like, I did not hit you. I literally slapped the bottom of your foot. Like that's not a hit. And then I may or may not have called him a pussy ass bitch. But no, I mean, I firmly believe that people that say the R word deserve to be slapped on the foot. Especially when they say it knowingly, especially when they know. He knew I had learning disabilities. I told him it was a bad thing to say. I reminded him that it was a bad thing to say and why, and I told him it was a slur, and he backed that up by then using my learning disabilities to then justify the reason why he called me the R word. First of all, he never apologized to me about this. I don't expect him to apologize. He might make some sort of apology now that I'm like telling people about it. The past year, Bryce has not had to acknowledge this whatsoever. And so I'm like, well, maybe now that like people know, maybe he'll say something. But y'all, like I want it to be known that like he did not say this word ignorantly. Like he did not say this as a synonym for stupid. He did not say this as a synonym for dumb. He wasn't saying this as the way that a lot of people accidentally say this word. Like, he meant it as a slur. So he was yelling at me, and then production was coming in, and other house guests were coming in, because again, we were in our own room downstairs, and he was saying how I was violent, how he didn't feel safe with me in the house because I had just assaulted him, when I was trying to tell them, no, I did not assault him. I literally just slapped the bottom of his foot because of how he was speaking to me. And they pulled me aside because they thought I was violent. They thought like I've never felt more like a monster in that second. Like, I knew that I wasn't a monster because I knew that I didn't do anything wrong. And I knew that how I acted was completely justified. But he was like, oh, like, my foot is still numb. Like, and I was like, no, like, I was like, cause you're a pussy. I was like, cause you're a bitch. Like, I mean, that sounds bad, but that really is. Either he is the most sensitive person ever with the most delicate feet, or he was just exaggerating to do what? Like, to just like get me kicked off, or like, I have no idea. Like, I mean, I know that him and I were not like the best of friends, but he definitely just like wanted me, like, that he was like he was conspiring against me, you know, like, honestly. I didn't do anything wrong. But I remember just production, they had like, they were like guarding me almost like I was like a criminal. And I was waiting for the driver to arrive to come take me to the hotel, because I was so violent, they were now having to like put me in a hotel at night because I couldn't be trusted in the same room as Bryce because he felt threatened or in danger. And I remember Bryce like pacing back and forth by the pool, probably limping, honestly. Like, he just like, I just remember him pacing back and forth by the pool, like literally grabbing at his hair, being like, how did they let Kat into this house? How did she pass her mental evaluation? Everyone knows that she's crazy. She's out of her mind. Like, literally like mocking my mental health. So at this point, this man has called me a bitch, who, in his defense, I was being a bitch, but no, but I mean, I call myself a bitch. I'm not upset about that. Like, that's whatever. I don't think a man should ever call a woman a cunt. Ever. I've maybe called 3 people, or no, I think I've called 5 people in my life a cunt before, because that's a bad word to say. Like, honestly, I don't even know if they'll allow it on YouTube or anything. So he called me a bitch, he called me a cunt, he called me the R word, and now he's literally pacing back and forth alongside the pool, literally pulling his hair out while he's mocking my mental health. I remember sitting there, and I remember looking at one of the production guys who was like kind of holding me back. And I remember being like, are you seriously punishing me over this? Like, what's going on? Like, I was completely confused at why I was getting punished over this. And the production guy, he like literally, he couldn't even like make eye contact with me. Like, I mean, I'm sure he knew that I was wrongly being punished here, but there's probably nothing he could do about it, because I guess maybe because, actually, I mean, I couldn't tell you why they took Bryce's word over mine. There was nothing I could say to tell them that, no, like, he called me a bitch, and the R word. And I remember even trying to convince, like, not even convince, but I remember even trying to talk to production and being like, the R word is a horrible thing to say. It's a slur. Like, why are y'all not mad about this? Like, why are y'all not upset about the fact that this man just willingly called me a slur to my face? And it's like, it felt like a bad dream. Like, no one cared. Like, I felt like I was like shouting out into the darkness, and like no one was on my side. It was wild. So they took me to a hotel for the night, and the hotel beds were way more comfortable than the beds at the villa, so that was good. But they took me to the hotel for the night, and then the next morning I came back, and I talked to one of the head producers, and he said, hey, like, you know, last night escalated a little bit, you know, it kind of escalated. We just want to forget it ever happened. So, you know, just go back in the house, you know, get ready for the day, and just please don't mention it, because of course, you know, they're trying to, there was no way that they could have aired, because also MTV was very clear this season about violence. They had zero tolerance for violence. They were very clear about making it more of like a, like, family friendly, I guess. So they're like, we can't air any of that. And also, come to find out, they had no cameras, but I'll get into that later. But they were like, we can't air any of it. We can't talk about it. So just like act like it didn't happen. We'll move on. So I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm down. Like I had a good day before I got kicked off. So I'm ready to start the day. So I'm like getting ready. And then all of a sudden they come in and they're like, hey, Kat, like I see you're getting ready. Whenever you're done, come find us because we need to talk to you. So I finished getting ready. Then I went back and then turns out that they were like, we thought that everything was good. Turns out that it's actually not good. We're going to have to conduct an investigation about what happened. So we're gonna have to send you back to the hotel. And then they told me it was just gonna be for a couple of hours. So they were like, oh, you'll be back. Like, whatever. I was like, okay, cool. Like, whatever. I think what had happened was, I think Bryce thought that he had kicked me off that night. I think he thought that I was leaving, never coming back. And he saw me walk back in to the villa because I remember making like a little bit of like a slight eye contact with him as I was walking in. He was over in the kitchen. And I think that he saw me walk back in and he threw a fit and he said, I don't want her here. She's violent. She's aggressive, like whatever. And then all of a sudden he's like, I want her kicked off. And they can't just kick me off. They have to run and invest. Like they have to have something. They have to have a reason to kick me off. You know what I mean? So I guess then they were like, okay, well, if you want her kicked off, we're going to have to run a whole investigation about it. So they said it was going to be a couple hours. I was in that hotel room for probably 3 days, I think. Hold on, it happened Thursday, Friday. Yeah. And then they got back to me on Sunday. And I was like, I thought y'all said this was going to be a couple hours. I would have like brought my toothbrush or something. But yeah. Turns out there were no cameras. So it's not like Big Brother. There's no live feeds, which I wish that there were. So there was no live feed. So they'd have no camera to go off of. But they did have audio because we had our mics on. So when they ran the investigation that Bryce had, I guess, called to get me kicked off, he ended up playing himself because they heard him call me a bitch, a cunt, and the R word. And they were like, okay, well, they also told me that they heard what had sounded like it could have been a hit. And because that part of the story matched up with Bryce's story, they had to take his word for it. But then also, he got kicked off for hate speech. So at the end of the day, like I got kicked off for violence, but he got kicked off for hate speech. And I would much rather get kicked off of a show for slapping someone on the foot for being a whole ass bigot. So I don't know. When I finally got kicked off, I was relieved. I called my dad and my mom and I was like, hey, like I just got kicked off. And they were like, woohoo. And I was like, no, like I literally got kicked off because I hit somebody in the foot because they called me the R word. And then they were like, woohoo. Like my family's proud of me. I didn't do anything wrong. This is not an apology video. Nothing good came out of it. The only good thing that came from it was it allowed me to realize that I don't have to be treated like that. I don't have to go on a show to try to get acceptance from people. Like I don't have to put myself up for that kind of scrutiny. I don't have to sit in a room while a guy berates me in my mental health and calls me slurs. So when I came home, I decided that I wanted to only surround myself with people who love me. And that's what I've done. Well, I think I'm gonna wrap up here because Alex just brought me some dumplings. Delish. And yeah, but it felt really good to talk about this. And also, I guess like if I have like a call to action about all this is I want to let y'all know like how important it is to. I'm gonna cry. If you ever hear somebody say the R word, whether they're using it for a synonym for stupid or dumb, they're describing something as that word, they might not have any ill intentions at all. But if you ever hear somebody say that, just tell them, hey, don't say that word. That's not a good word to say. I've even said it in the most awkward situations where I've been like, man, if I call this person out, is it going to ruin the vibe? But please, like, if you're hearing this, like, if you hear somebody say the R word, just please correct them. It's a simple gesture, and people really shouldn't be saying that word because it's a very, very hurtful thing to say. So, and if you have to, slap them in the foot. But you didn't hear that from me. All right. With that being said, conspire away, bitches.